Welcome everybody to the second class in the third chapter study of the expanded Yoga Sutra study series. So I just wanted to recap what we studied last time. We learned about a very important concept called saṃyama. And the saṃyama is defined as a combination of dhāraṇā, which is focus, dhyāna, which is continued focus into meditation, and samadhi. In samadhi, the subject-object difference ceases. You just melt into the object. You just lose all identification of the I. So you just completely melt into the object. That is samadhi, right? Now, this is not defined well in most books. That's why I wanted to emphasize saṃyama. Saṃyama is not samprajñāta samadhi, as somebody asked. Saṃyama is a tactical use of dhāraṇā, dhyāna, samadhi to retrieve information. Like you put a bucket into a well to retrieve water. If you just let the bucket go, it will just land, and it's same thing happens in samadhi. If you just let yourself lost, you will be carried. You have that's why they say you fall into samadhi. You do not, sometimes you don't have control. When you start with the first stage, vitarka, which is gross object, visualize a sun coming up, right? Then you feel the radiance, the warmth of the sun. Then you go into the subtle vitarka, vichara. Then you go into the vichara samadhi. You are meditating on the subtleness, the warmth of the sun. From that, you feel a lot of joy. So you meditate. Now you go into ananda, sananda samadhi. Finally, you become so quiet. There's only a sense of pure I, not I as a man, woman, father, mother, all that, but sense of pure I. That is the sasmita samadhi. There, you can just lose yourself into these stages. You may also get into asamprajñāta. In this saṃyama, you do not want to go into asamprajñāta. You are using it tactfully to retrieve information, which means the way Swami Hariharananda Aranya defines it, he defines it as a working samadhi, where you put in the bucket to retrieve the water like that. You stay on the edge. You don't lose yourself. So you operate between dhyāna, dhyāna, samadhi to understand an object from various angles. So when you melt into the object, you feel, you get what is called a viveka khyati. So the intuitive, later Patañjali would use the word pratibha, that is divine intuition about an object. This is what you get from saṃyama, okay? So that is the difference. Sumitra, is it now understood? You do not want to lose. It is not samprajñāta samadhi at all. It is a very tactical use of dhyāna, dhyāna, samadhi. Okay, so far is everything clear from the last class? It's a very important concept.
Yes.
Yeah. Now we will go. So we've studied these three trayam or trayam antarangam purvebhyah. These dharana, dhyana, samadhi are internal limbs in comparison to the previous five. And Patanjali says that even these three limbs, that is dharana, dhyana, samadhi, tatapi bahirangam nirbījasya, even this triad of saṃyama, this the dharana, dhyana, and samadhi is external compared to the nirbīja. Bija means seed. Nirbīja is, I'm loosely translating it as asamprajñāta, but I will clarify that in 1 second. So this is because you are familiar with samprajñāta and asamprajñāta. So Patanjali says these dharana, dhyana, samadhi, even though they're the highest states of yoga, samadhi, it looks like an external limb compared to the seedless samadhi or the nirbīja samadhi. He says nirbīja samadhi is so high. He puts it so high compared to even the Ashtanga yoga, which culminates in samprajñāta samadhi. Nirbīja samadhi seems internal, whereas these seem like external, even though you're dealing with the mind. So he puts he puts nirbīja samadhi at such a high level. Okay, so saṃyama still requires a bija. So it is, it falls under the samadhi in the saṃyama. It falls under sampragnata samadhi. So in that sense, Sumitra, what you said is correct. But it is a clever use. The dharana and dhyana come in. Before you lose yourself, you pull it back so that you don't completely get lost into the object. So you want to retrieve information. If the bucket just sits in the water, just floating around, there is not use. You have to retrieve the knowledge up. So that's why you need the dharana, dhyana to go to another angle, all that. Okay. So saṃyama still requires a bija, a seed. In nirbīja, the object itself disappears. So yes, Sanjana, you had a question?
Yeah, just regarding this itself. So just to clarify, does sampragnata mean that it's just the bucket floating there, so it's a linear movement into that samadhi, but saṃyama is a cycling between the three, or however you require it, you go between dharana, dhyana and samadhi?
Yes, yes, very good. Yeah. When you go into samadhi, I said the subject object disappears, right? That is when you understand, you feel you're the object. You feel the sun, you want to meditate on the sun. You feel the sun's warmth, you feel how the sun works. But then you can just get lost pointlessly. So you have to come back, retrieve, and then look at it from another point of view, the light, the heat, all that. So to pull it back, you have to come back into dharana. Otherwise, you'll just be sitting in the sun's warmth, just meditating on that. You see that? In order to get a full knowledge of an object, you have to come out. Otherwise, you'll just be, you will understand what the warmth is, about that aspect, but you won't understand other aspects. Okay? All right. Now, remember, so the reason this is now, Patanjali is going to explain a very, very, very important concept. That's what he's laying the groundwork for. What he is going to say is, everything in this world is moving, and it's the gunas are mutating. Remember, in the first chapter, we saw this magnet example. Initially, everything was very quiet. Let's see if we can go to that magnet example. We have it somewhere, or is it in the second chapter? It's probably, yeah, it's in the second chapter. We saw the magnet example. Does anybody remember the magnet example? I'll try to go to that slide. Give me 1 second. So the pratyaya, so the initially everything is in equilibrium. And when the Purusha comes close to the Prakriti, then the gunas which are in equilibrium starts mutating. So Patanjali is now trying to tell a very important concept, that even in nirbīja samadhi, where there's the mind screen is blank. Remember the 4 parts of the mind? There is mana, buddhi, ahankara, chitta. So in the manas, there's a lot of these imprints, saṃskāras there. Okay? And the chitta is the movie theater, right? The chitta is empty. So there are no thoughts in asampragnata samadhi. This is very difficult for us to reach. Most of us, if you practice meditation for some time, you get a taste of the sampragnata samadhi, all 4 levels. But nirbīja samadhi is very rare. You may temporarily drop into that and you'll come out, but to stay there for a long time is, for most ordinary people, it's difficult. So what Patanjali is trying to say is, even in the nirbīja samadhi, there are changes happening, even though the mind is blank, at the samskara level. And always there is change. There's no stillness. And this change, because things are changing, and when a yogi is finely tuned, the yogi can trace back the change. That is how siddhis come. That's how you can understand your past lives. And pratyayasya parachitta jnanam. So he says, by concentrating on the pratyaya, you can read others' minds, and you can also read Purva Jati Jnanam, past lives, all that. Okay, so Patanjali is now going to lay the foundation. But before that, I wanted to tell Asampragnata Samadhi is the other kind of Samadhi which arises through constant practice of Paravairagyam. We've seen the difference, right? Sampragnata and Asampragnata. We've exhaustively seen the difference between these two. I sent this comparison also yesterday. So in Sampragnata Samadhi, these are all, I'm just revising, that's nothing new. You all know that Sampragnata Samadhi, there's a seed used. So it's called Sa-bija. We'll come to the word bija. I think this is Amy's favorite word. Amy asked this question, why is the word seed, roasted seed, all those things are used? They are used for a reason. We'll see that soon. It's very used for a very strong reason. Then in Asampragnata, it is a form of nirbīja samadhi without seed. Object of focus is a gross or subtle object is required. Okay, you're able to see my screen, right? With the Sampragnata, my pointer also. Okay, in Sampragnata, it is objectless awareness, and the mental activity is one-pointed cognition. There's a vritti that remains in Sampragnata. Vritti means mind modification. It can be the same image, but still something is there. The vritti is there. In Asampragnata, all mental fluctuations cease. And the saṃskāras, this can be active or dormant. There are still seeds that can sprout. In Asampragnata, they're residual. They're getting fried. They're like fried seeds that cannot sprout. The I sense is present in Sampragnata. It's still there. Even though the subject-object, they merge, there is still a refined I sense there. You're merging with the object, but still I is there. That is completely dissolved. The trinity of knower, knowing, known merges. And how it's achieved? Sampragnata through concentration, dhāraṇā and dhyāna. Whereas Asampragnata is through supreme non-attachment, paravairagyam. And now note that even though I have used the words nirbīja samadhi and Asampragnata samadhi synonymously, orthodox yoga scholars will take offense. Swami Hariharananda Aranya, he says Asampragnata is a form of nirbīja samadhi because nirbīja is a structural category denoting any meditative state where the active mind has ceased to process a cognitive object or alambana. Do you see what I'm saying? So, Asampragnata samadhi, some pragnam means what? Cognition, knowledge, knowing. There is Asampragnata means there's no cognition involved. Cognition is involved when the mind focuses on an object. When the mind doesn't focus on an object, there's no object in the mind, in the screen, it's blank, there's no cognition. But Patanjali says cognition and seed. So when there is a cognition in the mind screen, there is also a seed to focus on. But Patanjali says all Asampragnata samadhis are nirbīja samadhi, but not all nirbīja samadhis are Asampragnata samadhis. And the reason is, we've seen that again before, is because Patanjali, he later says, bhava pratyayo videha prakritilayanam. There are some beings that have the specific mind where it's experienced by certain classes of entities who achieve massive concentration but lack the liberating wisdom. So, Videha and Prakritilayas, two examples that he uses. Videha means without a deha, which means discarnate, bodiless devas, and Prakriti Laya means one subsisting in the elementals. This Asampragnata Samadhi happens by birth. We saw one example of Shaubari. You see, Shaubari, he meditates underwater. He's merged into Prakriti, the water, but his desires have not quenched. when he wakes up from samadhi, sees a family of fish, he wants to have a family. So we've seen that story. I hope you remember the story. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to tell the difference between the asampragnata and nirbīja. All asampragnata samadhi falls under the bigger category of nirbīja, with the liberating wisdom from para vairagyam. There is no seed, and you have liberating wisdom because the seeds are roasted. Whereas in nirbīja samadhi, it necessarily need not be. And the example is the videhas and prakritilayas. Okay, so is that now clear? Now, so he tells, he puts such a high, the nirbīja samadhi at the top. Now, the significance of the term seed. Why is the word bija or seed used instead of any other word? Anybody wants to say? Amy or anyone?
I mean, it's indicating that there's like something that can sprout from it, right? That there's
Very good.
yeah.
So the seed has two,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
very good. So seed has two terms. It represents an object of focus. It signifies that it germinates into future actions due to latent desires, karma ashaya. So that's the reason why sabija and nirbīja are used. So the hierarchy of samadhis, we have the lower samadhi. So Patanjali clearly here says asampragnata, which is form of nirbīja, is the highest level. All these lower levels, sampragnata, all this, they come under lower. They're as though they're like external limbs compared to asampragnata samadhi. And in between, there's another layer, which is like a transition layer. And the transition layer, later we'll see in the 4th chapter, Patanjali calls that samadhi dharma mega samadhi. Why is it called dharma mega? So the mega means cloud. Dharma mega means a cloud of dharma, righteousness. This dharma is so pure. When the rain of dharma falls, it washes away all impurities. So this is why it's chosen very particularly with a reason. After the lower samadhis, the sampragnata, remember the 4 stages: gross, subtle, happiness, that's the mind, then the pure I-ness. After this, a person gets viveka khyati, discrimination, very sharp mind, and the mind can discriminate between purusha and prakriti. After the washing away of everything, you get para vairagyam, washing away of all the impurities. You get extreme dispassion. You don't, all the things of the world, they lose interest because you are in such a happy state from samadhi. And finally comes asampragnata samadhi, where even the latent impressions are rendered dormant like fried seeds. Okay, so after sampragnata, sa asmita samadhi, viveka khyati is obtained, because person is able to distinguish between purusha and prakriti. Vyasa explains that when a yogi reaches the highest state of omniscience and discriminative knowledge, prasankhana, so later he says, they might still harbor a subtle attachment to that profound realization. So when they reach the sasmita, after all the siddhis, they may have attachment just because they found something so profound. However, when the yogi becomes completely disinterested, akusida is the word Patanjali uses, later we'll see. Even in this ultimate omniscience, seeing it merely as a subtle manifestation of the gunas, they attain a constant, unbroken flow of discriminative discernment called viveka khyati. The unwavering detached state is called dharma mega samadhi, cloud of dharma, which ultimately washes away all afflictions. So that's how Vyasa puts it. Okay. Now, so far, is this clear? This slide, you can keep it as a reference. The lower samadhis, sampragnata, then transition. Patanjali introduces this only in the 4th chapter, then asampragnata. We've seen asampragnata and the sampragnata, and now he is introducing a term called saṃyama. which includes the asampragnata, this samadhi, plus dharana dhyana to retrieve information. Okay, so far, are everybody with me before we go into the technical part? Okay, Sanjana, everyone else? Okay, Sumitra, Amy. Okay, now, Patanjali is first going to start into the mechanics of meditation. Okay, the way Patanjali defines this is mind is there only in the present moment. Past is memory, future has not arrived. Mind exists only in the present moment. So he uses the word shana, moment. So mind, moment by moment, you have to compare. Moment by moment, it could be the same. Moment by moment, it could change. So he now looks at parinama, transformations. Why it's important is Patanjali is first going to talk about the mind transformations. Then he's going to say in a similar way, the prakriti, the gunas, they are transforming. And by going back to the source, the yogi who's so subtly aware of things, has got great pratibha, divine intuition, can trace things back to the origin. That is how the yogi is able to get these superpowers. So he's going to explain that. So that's why parinama, transformations from one moment to the next. Vyasa explains that the mind is in a state of constant parinama. Parinama means transformation or change. Even in a still mind, asampragnata yoga, this is what I was telling, there are changes at the level of impressions, the samskara impressions. That is the Nirodha-pariṇāma. He uses the word Nirodha-pariṇāma, which we are going to see in just a few seconds. Now, if the gunas get into equilibrium, then they recede and the mind dissolves. Mind is nothing but gunas. Okay, Prakriti is composed of only 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So that's why I showed the magnet example. Initially, everything was at equilibrium. Now, when the Purusha comes, things start going, there's lack of equilibrium and the gunas are mutating. The mind is constantly changing. When the gunas stop mutating, then they recede into pradhana. That is the prakriti in the original form, without where everything is in equilibrium, the mind itself dissolves. The mind only shows up when there is lack of equilibrium. Okay, which we've seen this extensively in the second chapter. If you want to know more, you can revise the notes from the second chapter, the magnet example. Okay, I'm not going to go into that again. Okay, now parinama, transformations from one moment to the next. Patanjali is going to say, let me make sure that I'm recording the meeting. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, so Patanjali is going to talk now about the parinamas. Okay, the 3 parinamas, the moment by moment transformations. Just see what happened to. Okay. 3 parinamas he's going to talk about. Samādhi-pariṇāma, transformation into samadhi. Then he's going to talk about ekagrata-pariṇāma, transformation into one-pointedness that relates to repetitive, identical, identical cognition. 1 second while I have a different setup today. So I'm playing with the windows to not obscure me. Okay. Right. So the 3 moment-to-moment transformations. So there's everything is done in a certain order. If you understand the logic, things will become super easy. Otherwise, this is one of the most confusing portion of the Yoga Sutras. Pretty much I can say most of the books have not explained it in detail. Swami Hariharananda explains it very thoroughly. Okay, let's look at the 3 things. Look at the sutra numbers. The lowest, the basic transformation is 3.11. The highest transformation is 3.9, and it's there for a reason. I'll come to that. Samādhi-pariṇāma, transformation into samadhi. The mind changes, right? It changes from involves, it changes from being scattered to into focus. Then ekagrata-pariṇāma, transformation into one-pointedness, which means repetitive identical cognition. In the first case, it involves changes in cognition and latency. The second case, it relates to repetitive identical cognition, change in only cognition. In the third state, Nirodha-pariṇāma, transformation into complete arrest of the mind, involves change in the latencies only, because there's nothing in the mind to cognize. There's no cognition change. Now, I'm telling you ahead of time, if you look at these words, Samādhi, Samādhi seems to be the highest state. You agree with me? Then the word ekagrata is used. What could be very confusing is the term ekagrata we've seen is how dhyāna is defined. For example, tatra pratyayekatanatha dhyanam. Ekatanatha means same, continuous, unbroken flow. So it may look, I'm trying to avoid all the confusion by clarifying everything, because the first question you will ask, Samādhi-pariṇāma, you are saying, is the basic transformation from scattered mind to one-pointed mind. Then ekagrata-pariṇāma is one-pointed mind to one-pointed mind. Then Nirodha-pariṇāma, when the contents of the mind itself disappear, complete transformation into complete arrest of the mind. But Samādhi, you are saying, is the basic, whereas ekagrata, which defines dhyāna, you are saying is higher than that. How is that possible? Dhyāna comes before Samādhi. Now you are saying Samādhi comes before dhyāna. It's very confusing. Does anybody want to take a guess as to why it's written like that?
Is that because, well, Samadhi is a transformation from scattered to focused to Samadhi to focused, but then ekagrata pariṇāma is you can keep coming back. It's repeated coming back to the Samadhi.
Yes.
I don't know. So it's not just once. It's not
correct.
No, okay.
So ekagrata-pariṇāma is a higher state, because from the scattered mind coming to a Samadhi is one thing, but from Samadhi to keeping the mind the same, that is a higher transformation, right? So the second transformation should be higher than the first, but look at the word. First Samadhi is used, then the higher one is called ekagrata, which refers to dhyāna. So it looks very confusing. The reason is Samadhi is a state. Samapatti is the transformation. Remember, we've defined samapatti, the process, the engrossment. So here, the pariṇāma refers to transformations. It is not the state. So these are all transformations. That is why it seems confusing, but there is a logic for using the word. Samādhi-pariṇāma means the mind becomes like quenched from being scattered to being focused. That's the only meaning of the word. You shouldn't confuse it with the Samadhi state. Here Samadhi is transformation into Samadhi, and then keeping it ekagrata means one, keeping it ekagrata, eka means one, so keeping it the same. So it's transformation into one-pointedness. Okay, so that's the only difference. Now, the other thing is, you see the order. The lowest one is 3.11, 3.12, 3.9. So the next sutra, why is this order like that? Haphazard order. Samādhi-pariṇāma, transformation from wandering state to Samadhi, the lowest, easiest transformation. Ekagrata, transformation into repeated one-pointedness, remaining in one-pointedness. Nirodha-pariṇāma, transformation into complete arrest of the mind. The movie theater is blank. Can anybody guess why this is mentioned like that?
It seems to be like how the sutras are written, that like the goal is given first and then like the steps to get there come after.
Yeah, very good guess. But in this case, the reason Nirodha-pariṇāma is talked about is the previous sutra 3.8. Patanjali talks about the nirbīja samadhi, and therefore he wants to maintain continuity. That's why it seems a little haphazard, but he wants to maintain continuity, which is why he first defines Nirodha-pariṇāma, then Samādhi-pariṇāma, and Ekagrata-pariṇāma. Sutra is like a suture, the thread. It's like a thread with all these beads. So there has to be some continuity. Everything comes from the previous one. So for example, when pranayama is defined, tasmin sati swasha prashvashayo gati vicheda pranayamaha. Tasmin sati, having established in the asanas, this goes like that everywhere. Even here you will see to maintain continuity, Patanjali is doing it in this way. So in Sutras 3.9 and 3.10, he explains Nirodha-pariṇāma, the transformation of complete mental arrest, which is the exact same mechanical process required to sustain that ultimate seedless state. Okay, so topical continuity dictates that he must immediately explain how the that nirbīja samadhi works. So what happens during moments of stillness? Vyuttana nirodha saṃskārayo abhibhava pradurбhavo nirodakshana chittanpayo Nirodha-pariṇāma. Look at it's a very long sutra. Okay, this is how you have to read it. Vyuttana saṃskāraha abhibhavaha. Okay, impressions. Vyuttana means outgoing tendencies. Samskara is the tendency, the latent impression. So the outgoing latent impressions, abhibhavaha, they disappear. The outgoing latent impressions disappear. Then nirodha samskaraha udbhavaha. Utpatti means production. So the impressions, nirodha samskara refers to the impressions of restraint. Udbhavaha, they appear in the mind. So the transformation of the mind from having an object of focus into an arrested state happens at every moment of blankness. And in every moment of blankness, the impressions of the outgoing mind disappear, and the impressions of the restraint appear. Vyuttana nirodha samskarayo abhibhava pradurbhavo nirodakshana chitta anvayaha. Nirodakshana chitta anvayaha means the association of the mind with a moment of wiping out. Anvaya means association. This is defined as Nirodha-pariṇāma. There's a transformation into stillness. Nirodha-kshana. So look at now he's always using the word shana, means moment. Mind exists only in the moment. Okay, so even what Patanjali is, this is the very important thing. Even when the mind looks completely blank, the chitta looks blank, at the level of the manas, the impressions, there's a tug of war going on between outgoing samskaras, that which wants the mind to wander out, and the restraining samskaras, that which wants the mind to go inward. Outgoing samskaras causes the mind to wander, restraining samskaras arrests the mind. Okay, now there are two things. So this is not explained anywhere. None of the books, they just do what can I say, word by word translation. Meaning is not explained. Only in Swami Hariharananda Aranya's book this is explained well. Now you have to understand the difference. Previously I said that here, right? In Samādhi-pariṇāma, it involves changes in both cognition and latencies. In the Ekagrata-pariṇāma, only in cognition. In Nirodha-pariṇāma, only in the latencies. Now let's see that in the context of here. We have to distinguish between cognition and impression. We are aware of cognitive activities. The mind is thinking something. You are not aware of what goes on in your subconscious, the saṃskāra. Okay? Saṃskāra sakshat karanat purvajati jnanam. We're going to see that sutra. By meditating saṃyama on the saṃskāras, you understand your purva jati. So it is not easily visible. It doesn't go on in your mind. You have to go really deep. We are not aware of activities at the level of impression. Now, why is the term kshana used? Because mind exists only in the present moment. Past is a memory. Okay? Changes are taking in the Nirodha-pariṇāma. Changes are taking place only at the saṃskāra level because there's no cognition going on. The mind is blank. So only changes happening are at the saṃskāra level. Is this point clear so far? Or do you need explanation? So it's clear. This is simple, right? Okay. Now the next is a little tricky. Okay, not this one. One more. This is easy. What happens due to habitual restraint? Nirodha saṃskāras. Tasya prashanta vahita saṃskārāt. Beautiful sutra. From this comes a continuous flow of peace. Prashanta vahita, flow of peace, prashantan, peace from saṃskāra. From this saṃskāras comes a continuous flow of peace. Now, then the second the lowest level transformation, remember, from 3 point, previously, the 3.11 is the lowest, 3.9 is the highest, but it's explained earlier on because of maintaining continuity. Okay. Now, Patanjali is explaining 3.11, the transformation into samadhi from a scattered mind to a one-pointed mind. Sarpataikagratayo shayodayo chittasya samadhi-pariṇāma. Sarvartaha shayaha. That's how you have to read it. Sarvartaha means all pointedness is destroyed. Shaya means destroyed. All pointedness is destroyed. Ekagrataha udayaha. Udaya means rising. So one-pointedness arises, and not just that, not just at the mind level, and the responsible impressions too. This is not mentioned, but Swami Hariharananda in the commentaries specifically mentions this. Otherwise, even I wouldn't know that these changes happen both at the cognition level, because it's going from scattered mind to one-pointed mind, and at the subconscious impression level. So, sarvartha ekagrata kshayodayo chittasya samadhi-pariṇāma. This is called the samadhi-pariṇāma of the chitta. So, the movie theater still has a movie, but instead of like fast moving scenes, it's become slow and almost one. Sarvataha kshayaha, all pointedness destroyed. Ekagrataha udayaha. This is chittasya samadhi-pariṇāma. This is mind's transformation into samadhi. So the Patanjali constantly uses the word pariṇāma. Pariṇāma means transformation. Okay, like the movie theater of the mind. To remind you, when the movie quiets down to the screen with the same object, there's a lot of things happening to just the light or one object on the screen. Now, here, the cognition is changing. Conscious thoughts are changing from scattered, random objects to single focused. So naturally, there's a change in cognition. And Swami Hariharananda says latency, saṃskāras. In the deep conscious, the latent impressions of distractions are being actively suppressed. More you meditate, more calm you become. So it becomes a habit ingrooved into you. latent impressions of one-pointedness are arising. In this stage, an active structural upheaval is taking place. The mind is transitioning from a state of distraction to a state of focus. Because the mind is changing its fundamental mode of operation, the two things are happening simultaneously, because both the surface level thoughts and the deep level seeds are shifting types. This transformation involves both cognition and latencies. So far, is this understood? This is also simple. I think the next one is the one which is a little tricky to understand. Is everybody with me now in this transition? This is the basic level. Okay. Now, this one, the attainment of one-pointedness. Tata punah shantoditau tulya pratyayau chittasya ekagrata-pariṇāma. Tataha punaha shantaha uditaha. Shantaha, the thought that just went into shanta also means peace. Here, shantaha means thought that just went into the past. Shanta means went into the past. Uditam means uprising, rising. What rises? Future. So the thought that has just emerged. Okay, we'll see that in the next list. Shanta uditaha tulya pratyayaha. So tulya pratyayaha means identical, similar mental contents. Tulyaha means tulya ninda stitir mauni. Bhagavan uses in the Bhagavad Gītā. Same, identical. So they have Muni, who's the same in censure, that is blame, and praise. Yomad bhaktaha same priyaha. That bhakta of mine, I consider that bhakta to be highest. Tulya means same. So tulya pratyayau, the contents of the mind are same. So the transformation into one-pointedness occurs when the content of the mind in that state of samadhi arising at any instant is same as that arising in the previous instant. So that which is arising is what's happening now. It is same as the previous. Shantaha, previous. Uditaha, what is arising now. They're both the same. This is the attainment of one-pointedness and remaining in one-pointedness. Ekagrata-pariṇāma is what it's called. Now comes the tricky part. Swami Hariharananda says, here there is a change in the cognition only and not saṃskāras. This is extremely confusing. He says there's no change in the saṃskāras here. In the other two cases, Nirodha-pariṇāma, it's obvious. Why is there a change in the saṃskāras in the Nirodha-pariṇāma? I just said, anybody wants to say? Why is there a change in the saṃskāras or the latencies in the Nirodha-pariṇāma?
Because the mind is arrested fully, and then
Yes. Mind is blank, so there's no change in cognition. There's only change in the saṃskāras. Here, it's very confusing. So, Swamiji says, there is change in cognition only, not saṃskāras. How can there be a change in cognition when the same image is there? Like, you visualize a candle, a flame, that's just there. There's no change from moment to moment, just 2 moments. It doesn't have to be for 1 hour. Just from one moment to another moment, same image. That's possible, right? How can there be a change in the cognition too? There is cognition, but how do you say there's a change in the cognition? For that, the way cognition works is like a movie theater. That's why I brought the movie theater example. Another film goes. The film is exactly the same as the previous one, but the light shines on the screen and it's the same as this, but it's a different film. So there is a change. It's not this film which is being exposed to the light, but it's this film now. Okay, what it shows a very subtle point. What does it show? Anybody wants to guess? It shows that the mind is subject to time. Time and space are constructs of the mind alone. Okay, here, yeah. At the level of cognition, thought of the object arises, subsides, it's immediately replaced by the exact same thought. So transformation is chronological flow of identical thoughts. Change happens due to the passage of time. There's something that's changing, that like time happens. In an arrested mind, time ceases to exist. This is an important point. At the level of saṃskāras, Swamiji says, there is no change in state because the thought is the same. So there is no imprint on the saṃskāras. Imprints happen only when there is a change. If there is no change, there's no imprint that happens. This is a very subtle point that Swami Hariharananda brings up. Yes, so does it mean that dhyāna is involved at this state? So focus, you can say, generally, when they say dhāraṇā, it refers to some effort, desha bandha chittasya dhāraṇā. We are trying, effort is to pull it into one place, like the horse which is trying to get out of the circle. We saw that, right? You are making an effort. So you may have some effort by that you're keeping the same thoughts. Remember, it's not for a long time. It's from 1 second, one moment to the next moment. So the answer is, there could be dhyāna involved. There could be some effort, focus involved. Okay? But the important thing, he's now just talking about transformations. Okay? There is no change in state on the samskara level because the thought is the same. Nirodha-pariṇāma, transformation into restraint and other transformations. Summarizing, in Nirodha-pariṇāma, the level saṃskara, latent impressions alone change. In Samādhi-pariṇāma, that is the lowest level of transformation, both saṃskāras and cognitions change. In ekagrata-pariṇāma, transformation into one-pointedness, the highest level where you stay from one, or your second highest level, stay from one image to the same image. It involves cognition alone, no change in the saṃskāras or the imprints. So Patañjali is essentially talking about transformation at the conscious and subconscious level. So far, are things clear? Everybody? Okay. So I've told this story before, so I don't know if we don't have much time. Let's see how many, we are at 3.12. I'll try to see if we later have time. We'll come to the story, but this is the Arjuna, Dronacharya's test for Arjuna. We'll see if we have time. At the end, we can come. Now, Patanjali is laying the groundwork for explaining siddhis. Now, for this, we have to understand some fundamentals of Sankhya and Yoga philosophy. Prakriti is the primal nature. Matter, energy, they're all called Prakriti. And in its invisible or unmanifested form, not even invisible, unmanifested form, it's called Pradhana. Okay? The gunas is the property of Prakriti which gives quality to it. So if you look at a cloth consisting of 3 threads, white, red, and blue. So these are the 3 gunas. In the end, what comes out? A cloth in a certain format. Something else can come out, a shawl, a scarf, using these 3 gunas. It can look predominantly blue with a little bit of a red strand, or it can look predominantly white. They all look different based on the composition of the gunas. This is how material nature works. Okay, guna, literally, does anybody know the definition of the term guna? Guna means a strand. So that's why this thread example is used. Guna literally means a strand. Okay, transformation of Prakriti. Pre-creation, the gunas are in perfect balance. This is what we've covered in the second chapter. I'm just repeating. I'm not teaching anything new here. The state of Prakriti is called pradhana. It is unmanifest or avyaktam. So you may want to recap chapter 2. Then creation begins. Balance is disturbed by the proximity of Purusha, the magnet example. Then rajas activity stirs. Gunas begin to interact, combine, and clash in unequal proportions. Manifestation, the interaction creates a universe of forms, mahat, ahankara, mind, matter. This manifest universe is also Prakriti. Universe is closed. Matter cannot disappear. According to Sankhya, it can only transform. Every single object in existence, from a thought in your head to a mountain range, is constantly undergoing these three simultaneous types of changes, parinamatraya. This is what we will study here. Now, transformation of physical elements and the senses. So this is the defining sutra. Without Sutra 3.13, the rest of the chapter 3 would look like a book of magic spells. It is Sutra 3.13 that make it with that it becomes a manual of occult physics or reality engineering. Swami Hariharananda explicitly says the author of the sutra has introduced them as a prelude to the past and the future knowledge. So we'll see. Etena bhutendriyeshu dharma lakshanavastha parinamapyakyata. Etena, by this analogy of the transformations of the mind, dharma lakshana avastha, the transformations of characteristic, we'll see all very technical words. It's very simple actually. I'll explain it in a few seconds. Dharma, characteristic, then lakshana means temporal character associated with time, and avastha, state. We'll see that too in the elements, and bhuta indriyeshu in the elements and sense organs. Vyakyata, they are explained. Etena is the key word linking the transformation of the mind and the Prakriti. Patanjali is saying by the same logic we just used to explain the mind, the physical world is also explained. The reason Patanjali uses the mind transformations as the basis for the physical ones is that both the mind and the physical matter are both born from the exact same source, Prakriti. Mind is inert. Mind shines. Mind is like the moon. Moon doesn't produce any light. But when sun reflects on it, it's a reflective medium. It shines as though it's producing its light. Mind is like that. Okay? Because they're both made of the three gunas, they obey the exact same universal law of continuous mutation. Patanjali is showing that the internal mechanics of a yogi, focusing the mind and the external mechanics of a lump of clay turning into a pot, are actually the exact same natural process happening at different levels. Okay? By bridging the mind, there is the sutras we saw, the last three sutras, to the physical elements, the next three sutras, Patanjali establishes the grand unified theory of Sankhya Yoga, because a yogi can use saṃyama to get the absolute mastery over the internal sequence of their own mind. They automatically get the ability to master the sequence of physical matter. This is the mechanical foundation for siddhis. If you perform saṃyama to perceive the invisible underlying substratum and alter the sequential arrangements of the qualities, you can literally change the physical manifestation of reality, leading to supernormal powers described in the rest of the Vibhūti Pādaḥ. So that is what Patanjali is saying. Yeah. Yes, Lena.
I was looking at this sutra, and I noticed you talk about the dharma, the lakshana, and avastha.
Yeah.
But then you have a temporal.
Yes, that's very confusing.
That is not listed, or at least in the 3.13. It seems like what was presented in there that you put in the temporal in this explanation.
Yeah. temporal so lakshana. So lakshana is a word which is colloquially also used. This person in Tamil, they say lakshanama arka, which means this person looks features, they just stand out. Okay, but here it's used in a technical term. So lakshana is used in terms of change of time, which means what it says is that this person's characteristics, person looks constantly good. Lakshana means just always good. So it refers to a change in time. Is it understood? It's a very technical way of using. Swami Hariharananda explicitly says that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come to that. We'll make it simple. Don't wait. So don't jump ahead. Okay. All right. Dharma. Essentially, dharma means it is the characteristic. You can think of it as a spatial arrangement. So you have time and space are the basic, what can I say, defining points in the universe, time, space, and then you can include a third axis, which is how good an object is. The same object at the same time, it can be bright, in a nice state, avastha, or it can be dull and kind of cracked and all that. So 3 axes: time, space, and how luminosity or intensity, how bright the object, how new, how shiny it looks. So dharma is the characteristic. So the dharma, there's here, you have a rectangular bar. The dharma characteristics is a cuboid, you can say. Here, the same gold, it's melted and made into a bracelet. Now it's dharma. It's in space, it looks like a different form. It's a bracelet. It's a specific arrangement of a material. Okay, so I'll directly go to the axis. Okay, 3 axes. Dharma, you can have a gold bar, or same thing can be made into a bracelet. Okay, now we will go to the next one. Next one, as I said, it's technical. Nirodha-pariṇāma. Don't focus on the change in the shape, focus on the change in the time states of the shape. What Patañjali is saying is the past and the future exist in an object. It is just unmanifest. So there are 2 shapes, gold bracelet and gold bar. But what is underlying them, gold remains the same. Simultaneous association. Swami Hariharananda emphasizes that when a mental state is in its present manifested phase, it is never completely dissociated from its past and future characters. They coexist. This is the thing. Manifest versus unmanifest. To address the objection that past, present, and future cannot happen simultaneously, he explains that time is a practical indication. The present simply means that the characteristic is currently known or perceivable, whereas the past and future refer to the characteristic is not known, subtle, or unmanifest. Latent, existent. Even when a temporal characteristic is not manifest and is considered past or future, it still fundamentally exists in the substratum. For example, when a mind is currently full of anger, the characteristic of attachment is not absent. It exists unmanifested. Okay? In the Bhagavad Gītā, there's a shloka, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate. So, due to attachment, constant attachment to an object, you develop like so much kama, like almost like lust for an object. And if you don't get that object, what you become angry. So when there is anger, it doesn't mean that attachment is not there. It is lying underneath. Okay. So this refers to the latent exists. It exists latent existence. It exists unmanifested. Okay. Lakshana is time change indicator. Present state of this is a block when a vartamana kala, bracelet is a future state, but the bracelet exists in this. The bracelet, when you consider a bracelet, this is the present state. The past state, atita, is a block. At its core, the root verb laksh means to mark, to indicate, to aim, to define. Here it's used as a time change indicator. In normal sense, temporal change just means time passing. In yoga philosophy, it means something more specific. It's a movement of a characteristics through the 3 time zones of existence: past, present, and future. So future bracelet in the first picture is just as real as the present bracelet in the second. It hasn't reached its manifestation point yet. Gold is the reality in all 3 states. Okay. All right, Amy, see you. All right. So I'll stop very soon. So avastha is the condition, shiny or not. And I'll quickly go into this. So you have 3 axes: space, time, and then increasing luster. So in this case, shiny bracelet, dull bracelet. Okay. Avastha is a technical term used by Patañjali. So according to Sankhya Yoga, when a characteristic disappears, it's not destroyed, it subsides into a latent state. Future is already present as a highly structured potential energy. Mechanism, this is the mechanism of seeing the past and the future using saṃyama. Okay, past is this flower, seed, present, future is the tree. Okay, so we have one sutra short, but I'll stop the recording here.